time as Toastmaster for an I'll Drink to That meeting? Don't sweat. This chapter of Mentor in a Box provides you with a basic foundation on how to create and run an effective meeting at I'll Drink to That Toastmasters. Now, there is a lot of material to cover, so we're going to break everything down into 3 separate episodes. The first episode is about what you should do when preparing for the meeting. The second episode demonstrates how transition statements help when running your meeting. The third episode gives pointers for presenting awards and wrapping up the meeting. So let's go back to preparing your meeting. You've taken 2 steps up to this point. You verified all the roles of your meeting are filled, and you've created the agenda. The third and final step is creating transition statements. Remember, your duty as a Toastmaster is to ensure the meeting runs smoothly and on time. Creating transition statements in advance provides launching points throughout your meeting and helps you move it along. Another way of looking at this is by recognizing transition statements help you as the Toastmaster move from point A to point B to finally point C. Or in terms of your meeting, move from barroom topics portion to prepared speeches to finally the evaluations portion. To be effective in your role as Toastmaster, you will need at least 9 transition statements in your meeting. Here are the 9 transition statements that we'll cover. Introducing yourself, presenting the format of the meeting, reviewing changes to the agenda, introducing the barroom topics master, introducing the timers report, transitioning into prepared speeches, introducing the speakers, not forgetting that timers report again, and passing the torch to the general evaluator. From this point on, we're going to break down each of the transition statements by explaining how you can prepare for each in advance, and then provide you with an example of what that transition statement might sound like in the context of a meeting. The first transition statement is introducing yourself. Before you sit down to write out this statement, it's good to remember that several things would have happened before you even get a chance to speak. For example, the president would have already called the meeting to order. The opening toast and educational moment have presented the material, and the club's business has already been conducted. By the time you walk up to the lectern, the president would have introduced you and your role as Toastmaster to the audience. Therefore, introducing yourself will not simply be a repeat of what the president has already done. Introducing yourself is about establishing you as the MC of the meeting. It can be a simple sentence or a few sentences, but make no mistake, this part is crucial. Introducing yourself gains the audience's trust, sets the atmosphere for the rest of the meeting, and makes your job a whole lot easier as Toastmaster. Here's an example of what this might sound like in the context of a meeting. Thank you everybody. Thank you so much. I am truly honored to be your Toastmaster this evening. I hope you're all holding on to your seats, because tonight we have a meeting that is both fun and exciting. The second transition statement is presenting the format of the meeting. As Toastmaster, you know the meeting is divided into 3 parts. However, you may not have known this when you first joined the club, and some of your new members and guests may not know this either. So take this time to write out how you'll explain what everyone should expect from your meeting. This is where truly preparing in advance really pays off. By verifying each of the roles of your meeting and creating the agenda, you know exactly how the meeting will shape up, including how many speakers will be presenting. For the benefit of our guests, the meeting is divided into 3 parts. The first part is for the barroom topics portion. This is where members are chosen at random by a barroom topics master to give a roughly 1-minute response to a question posed. They won't know what the question is in advance, so this gives us practice to think on our feet. Don't worry, guests, you will not be called on during this part. The second portion of the meeting is for prepared speeches. This is for those speakers who have prepared in advance to meet certain objectives, depending on the Toastmaster manual that they may be working from. Tonight, we have 3 speakers. The third part of the meeting is perhaps the most important portion, which is devoted to evaluations. This is where those who've participated up to this point will be given immediate feedback by our peers. And ultimately, this helps us become better speakers. The third transition statement is to address any changes to the agenda. For example, someone who originally was assigned to a role may be stuck in traffic and cannot attend at the last moment. So leave yourself some room to address changes to the agenda if necessary. When coming up with what to say, make a note to stay away from using a negative statement, such as, "Our second speaker is no longer John Doe." If there's a last-minute vacancy, a member from your club will usually volunteer to fill it. As far as the audience is concerned, you're the MC. You're in control, and you're simply taking the opportunity to give credit to the new volunteer. Now, before we begin, we need to make a few changes to the agenda. Our second speaker tonight will be Jane Doe. And the timer this evening is now John Doe. The fourth transition statement that you'll prepare is to introduce the Ballroom Topics Master. When introducing the Topics Master, you should have at least 2 to 3 sentences to transition the meeting to their control. This is a perfect time to perhaps reinforce the objectives of the DCP, otherwise known as the Distinguished Club Program. So when verifying the roles of your meeting, ask the Ballroom Topics Master whether they've completed any manuals or achieved any designations in Toastmasters. Make note of those accomplishments and be sure to include them in your introduction. Be aware, though, that this transition statement is not complete for the audience without visual cues led by you. After the introduction, make a special note that you will lead the applause. You will remain at the lectern until you shake the Topic Master's hand, and only then should you sit down. All right, let's begin. Our Ballroom Topics Master tonight is someone who's been involved with Toastmasters for 3 years. He received his Advanced Communicator Bronze last week with his recent speech, Look Who's Talking. Tonight, as the Ballroom Topics Master, he's going to make us do the talking. Please help me welcome to the lectern Advanced Communicator Bronze, Competent Leader, John Travolta. The fifth transition statement is to make room for the timer's report. Keep this part very simple. Once you've been introduced back to the lectern, thank your Topics Master for doing a good job. After that, ask for the timer's report. The timer will give you their report, and you will ask your fellow Toastmasters to submit their votes. Thank you, John. I knew you'd keep us on our toes. Can I get a timer's report, please? Thank you for that report. Toastmasters, please vote for the one you felt gave the best response, and the vote counter will come around and collect your votes. While votes are being collected, take this time to keep your audience engaged. Transition Statement 6 could be a really good point to remind the audience that they are moving into the second part of the meeting, as well as remind them of what they should expect. This begins our second part of the meeting, designed for prepared speeches. Tonight we have 3 speakers. Each of the speeches have been prepared in advance and will have a time limit depending on the Toastmasters manual they may be working from. The introduction of your speakers should have the same format because it's a simple way for the audience to remain equally engaged with each of the speakers. Start by naming the person who is speaking, introduce the evaluator you assign to the speaker, and ask them to present any objectives they may have. Afterwards, give a brief introduction. Just like with the Ballroom Topics Master, you can reinforce the Distinguished Club Program by noting any special designations. Now remember, lead the applause, shake their hand, and take your seat. When you are called back to the lectern, you can test your ad-lib skills with a quick statement after the speech. Consistency is key here, so continue with repeating this process for the rest of the speakers. Our first speaker tonight is Michael Douglas. Evaluating Michael Douglas is Catherine Zeta Jones. Catherine, can you please present Michael's objectives for this evening? Thank you, Catherine. Michael joined Toastmasters back in 2008. Since then, he has achieved his Competent Communicator designation in Toastmasters. The title of his speech is, I Run the Star Chamber. Please help me welcome to the lectern Competent Communicator Michael Douglas. Well, Michael, after that speech, you in fact run it. Now, transition statement 8 is perhaps the most important transition statement in the meeting. Remembering the timer's report after the prepared speeches section will make you look like a professional. So again, keep it simple. Ask for the timer's report, the timer will give the report, and you will ask your fellow Toastmasters to submit their votes. Can I get a timer's report, please? Thank you for that report. Toastmasters, please vote for the one you felt best met their objectives, and the vote counter will come around and collect your votes. Transition Statement 9 is about passing the torch to the General Evaluator. While votes are being collected, take this time to keep your audience engaged by reminding them they are moving into the third part of the meeting. Create a few sentences to introduce your General Evaluator, and note any special designations to reinforce the Distinguished Club program. Just like you did when presenting the Barroom Topics Master, you need to be prepared with visual cues. Lead the applause, remain at the lectern, and shake the General Evaluator's hand. Only then should you sit down. We now move on to what is perhaps the most important part of the meeting, the evaluations portion. This is where participants of our meeting up to this point get immediate feedback from our peers so that we can all become better speakers. This section is run by a General Evaluator, and our General Evaluator this evening is Lewis Black. Lewis joined Toastmasters in 2009. Since then, he has received his Advanced Communicator Silver designation, as well as his Advanced Leader Bronze. Please help me welcome to the lectern Advanced Communicator Silver, Advanced Leader Bronze, Lewis Black. So as a recap, with thorough preparation, you can effectively fulfill your role as Toastmaster to ensure the meeting runs smoothly and on time. Step 1. Verify all the roles of your meeting are filled. Step 2. Create the agenda. Step 3. Create transition statements. By creating at least 9 transition statements in advance, you're prepared to move seamlessly through the 3 parts of your meeting. And you would have created an environment for your fellow Toastmasters to flourish. Your final duty as Toastmaster is to present the awards. On the night of the meeting, you will take a few quick steps to ensure the best of the best are rewarded for all their hard work. We'll talk more about this in the next episode.